Welcome to the podcast. We are going to speak with Alexis Conneely, who is in Colombia, South America, a rural part of Colombia in the middle of the country, far away from everything. As you know, we talk about responsible travel, we talk about sustainability, wellness, and we touch on organizations and people that are doing their right thing. Now, I was invited to his Facebook group, and that is Conservation in Colombia. If you search that on Facebook, you get it. And he has a campaign running on Gofundme, and that is to save the neighbouring land from being developed. And I think it was fantastic to have him on the podcast. You can find all the links, including the GoFundMe link, in the show notes on the website under podcast.earth/conservation in Colombia. And if you go to the GoFundMe page on gofundme.com and you put something in the search bar there, and that is then Conservation in Colombia, the first one that pops up is his campaign. So that's really it. Without further ado, the podcast with Alexis in Colombia. Pleasure to meet you, first of all.
The same, Peter. Thank you so much for getting in contact.
Okay, and obviously you have no Colombian accent. I've got two Colombian friends here in London. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Ireland.
Ireland? Oh, you're Irish. Ah, there you go. Okay.
I thought that was clear. I thought that was understood.
No, not really, but it's all good. So how did you end up in Colombia?
Well, I like yourself spent a long period of my life traveling very slowly.
Right. Okay.
In fact, probably pretty much all of my adult life.
Right.
And I reached a certain point in life, I suppose, and I was in Colombia at that point. And I decided to settle.
Wow. It's a good place to settle as well. I've been there twice, so it's very nice. Very nice.
It has its pros, it has its cons.
Tell me about the pros.
Well, it's a very, very beautiful place.
Yeah.
It's still possible to live, I don't know, in a kind of off-grid kind of a situation. It's not as organized and registered as Europe, for example.
And that's a good thing, yeah.
It's a positive and a negative.
Both, okay, right?
Absolutely, because it can work in your favor in many ways. Because, for example, I can come here into the countryside and I can build a cabin here.
Yeah.
I don't have to until this point in today. I didn't have to ask permission to anyone to do that.
Right.
So that's a positive for me.
As long as the land is yours, I take it, or
as long as the land is mine, of course. But I mean in terms of planning permission and that kind of thing. So that's a positive for me in many senses.
Yeah.
But I know myself, and I'm willing to do things carefully and consciously.
Yeah.
It's also a negative because it means someone else can do something similar.
Yeah.
And not be so careful.
So cautious and not thinking about nature at all, basically.
No,
right?
And not thinking about anything necessarily.
Right. And so your name is Alexis Conneely, and I'm sure I pronounced that properly.
You did a very good job.
And we met via a Facebook group, as a matter of fact. It's called Conservation in Colombia. I was invited by one of my Colombian friends to join, and that is really how I found out about you. And I read a little bit about you, saw some videos on your GoFundMe page. And tell me a little bit about, first of all, about the situation in Colombia. What is it like there during COVID-19? You're living outside, you're a little bit rural, right? Or am I totally wrong here?
I'm extremely rural.
We're extremely rural,
yeah, well, precisely where I live, in the countryside, it would be difficult to know that there's anything happening.
Right.
Because life, in a way, continues as normal.
Right.
But the country in general is in quarantine. Where movement between different towns and cities is restricted and prohibited pretty much. But we're living in Colombia, so the rules are not necessarily fully enforced.
Right. That's same here, you know. I mean, everyone, you say you have to wear a mask and everyone, but not everyone is wearing a mask here. So it's the same everywhere. I'm sure some people just don't care, I suppose, or just don't know about it. Haven't lost anyone, and that's just. I
suppose that's definitely a factor. I think the lack of knowing someone or having lost someone, I think, is probably a big factor.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Is it? Do you think it's better than in the surrounding countries from where you are? Venezuela, Brazil, Peru. These are all countries that are bordering Colombia, Ecuador.
Absolutely. It's very hard to know based on the numbers because how much testing is really going on.
Yeah.
As far as I know, well, the registered cases in Colombia are approaching 200,000.
Okay.
About 8,000 deaths registered.
I saw that.
But I'm sure that that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Because people just aren't being tested. The health service in this part of the world is far from excellent, and that's a problem. But I think compared to Brazil or certainly Brazil or Venezuela, Venezuela is almost broken as a country at this point.
Yeah, Venezuela is really bad. Yeah,
and Brazil is suffering enormously.
Yeah.
Brazil has 200 million people and 2 million cases.
Yeah. Obviously, you're very rural. You just told us, and obviously you're far away from hospitals, from doctors and everything. Are you worried? Or?
No, I'm not. To be perfectly honest, I don't tend to worry greatly about these things.
Okay.
I see. First of all, it's a benefit to be rural because the chances of contracting something is greatly reduced.
Yeah.
And in my case, I'm just in the worst case scenario, I'm going to hope that my healthy immune system will help me to combat anything that I might encounter. And in the worst case scenario, well, there are hospitals, but it's just a bit of a journey to get there.
How do you get the news, if I may ask, if you're so rural? How do you get the news?
Internet. Everything through the internet.
Everything through the internet, yeah? Okay. Yeah. So the group on Facebook brought together to support the conservation in Colombia. You're creating a nature reserve, an organic community garden. So it sounds great. What is it exactly that you do? And I read something about a biodiverse location in Colombia. Colombia is obviously, it's considered by some articles the most biodiverse country in the world, by some other articles the second, but still very, very good. So what is exactly that you're trying to do with a biodiverse location in Colombia? What does that mean?
Okay, well, by a biodiverse location, I mean, obviously, as you say, Colombia is extremely biodiverse in general.
Yeah.
And one of the factors that plays a role in that is what they call in Spanish, as a direct translation, thermal floors, which are basically microclimates that exist at different altitudes throughout the mountains, because we're up here. Where we are at the moment is about 2,000 meters.
2,000 meters up, yeah, okay.
2,000 meters up above sea level, but it varies greatly. I mean, I can walk 20 minutes up the hill or 20 minutes down the hill, and I'm in a different climate. So that's one of the factors certainly that is involved in what I'm describing as a biodiverse location. We've got a huge amount of particularly bird life, invertebrate life, lots of different native plants and trees. And
you have a dog as well.
I have a dog as well. Yeah. A dog who decided he wanted to involve himself in the podcast.
All right.
Okay. So what we've done here, in part to protect the biodiversity of the area where we're living in, is essentially we are the ones who are living in a zoo. We fenced off the area where we live, and we leave the rest of it to regenerate and rewild as much as possible. Okay.
How did you fence that? What kind of fence are we talking about?
I think they call it cyclone fencing. I think is what they call it. Okay. Essentially a wire mesh fence.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just basically to keep more than anything, to keep the dogs into a limited space, and everything else can. And
I tried to look for a map, which I couldn't find on the Facebook page.
Excuse me on that one. I haven't gotten around to it. A good friend of mine, I've received advice from many, many different quarters in this process, because I have to admit, I began all of this with no experience at all.
Fair enough.
I was provoked by necessity into, as I perceive it, into doing what I'm doing. So a very good friend of mine advised me from the get-go that I should put up a good map, explaining and delimiting everything and making it clear. It's one of the things on my list that I simply haven't gotten around to.
So where are you exactly in Colombia? Is it close to Venezuela? Is it close to Brazil? Where are you?
Not really. Where we are is pretty much in the center of the country.
Center, okay, right, yeah.
Center of the country. We're about 5 hours from Bogota.
Yep.
In a region, or what they call here a department, called Boyaca. And here there's a small municipality known as Chinavita.
Chinavita. Okay.
Chinavita, like China,
okay.
Vita or Vita, and that's where we're located, in the mountains above and outside of that municipality. The town itself is a tiny village. It's a fly-speck village, and we're about 20 minutes away from there.
20 minutes by car or walking?
By car.
By car. So that can be quite a long way still, right?
Quite a long way, certainly by European standards.
Yeah.
It's a long way away, but anything becomes normal after a while.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I read something, and I've seen the video. It's really about the neighbouring lands, isn't it?
It is by and large. What happened basically was a group of people came in with the intention of setting up an intensive agricultural project there to produce, as far as I understand, tomatoes in a greenhouse setting for the external market. It's a somewhat, by Colombian standards, it's a somewhat lucrative endeavor. People are attracted to this kind of enterprise because it's something that they understand.
Yeah.
It requires huge inputs, however, certainly in terms of the kind of chemicals they have to use. Right. It has a massive damage on the water supply and of course the wildlife as a result. Yeah. Now, we came here, first of all, with the intention of protecting as much as possible the area that we're going to live in, that we are living in. And trying to promote environmental awareness generally through education, and seeing what we could do. This came as a surprise. We're still in our nascent stage of kind of setting up here. We didn't expect.
How long have you been there?
We've been here for about a year and a half. Okay. But during that year and a half, I've been building this cabin that I live in. Yeah. And we also work. We're both, myself and my wife, we're both English teachers and translators. That's what we do to earn money. So all of our efforts and funds and everything were focused on setting up here. And then this surprise kind of came out of left field. The problem is that if this sets up, this could become not just right beside where we are, but again, if it turns out to be lucrative, that could spell
the end. Expand. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. How big of an area are we talking about in hectares or whatever, meters, whatever?
The area that they're planning on developing is about 3 hectares.
3 hectares. Okay. Right. Is that about the land that you're looking to purchase as well? Yeah.
Exactly.
3 hectares.
We're trying to take that piece of land in its entirety, and as you know, turn it into a nature reserve and community garden. Okay. So the community garden part is for various reasons, in part to give some benefit to local people from the area itself, educate them as well about organic food production, and try to cultivate, kind of foster environmental awareness through working in the garden and developing the nature reserve, because some tree planting will be required.
Right. Okay. So it was, from what I understood, it was it is rented. The contract is there, but the only way out is really to buy it. Is that about the gist of it?
That's about the gist of it. Yeah. At the beginning, things are actually better now than I thought they were at the beginning.
How's that?
Well, I've had various discussions with the landowner, who as I mentioned in the video, is an elderly gentleman. He's been very nice. To tell the truth, he's been very helpful. Yeah. But his motivation is economic.
Sure. He wants money. Yeah.
There's money, but he has some sympathy for our situation, and he's willing to consider our proposals. And in fact, he claims to be more inclined towards helping us out than going the other path.
Why would that be? Why do you think that is?
Well, he claims that he sympathizes with our situation and with our attitudes towards nature.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I hope that's the case. It's what he tells me is the case. I'm taking it at face value. However, that doesn't mean he's going to do us a favor.
Okay.
No,
you're buying it, right? You're giving him money. He's going to get a large amount of money because
we absolutely have to buy it. Yeah.
What kind of amount are we talking about now? Because it went down, right, from 20
It did go down. It went down now to what we're asking for on the GoFundMe page at this moment is 12,000.
Okay.
This is after gathering whatever remnants of funds that we have ourselves to inject into the project. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing is we're going to continue working.
Yep.
So as money comes in, that also reduces the amount that we're asking for, because if it were within my means, I'd be perfectly happy to fund the project myself entirely. In fact, I feel deeply
okay. So that's basically if everything doesn't work out with the GoFundMe. You got quite a lot of money already on the GoFundMe page, right? So that's
we've passed about the 10% after 2 weeks.
That's very good. That's very good.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I still see the journey ahead rather than what we've achieved, but it's possible. Certainly with what we earn, we can make a dent in that. Mm-hmm. What the GoFundMe page brings in will also hopefully help continue to help us with that. And the other option will be, I want to put myself in contact with different environmental organizations anyway.
In Colombia or globally? Or?
Both. Absolutely both.
Okay.
Yeah. Up until this point, we've tried to avoid Colombia a little bit, because what we were trying to do from the beginning was not allow that this group of people who are trying to set up the agricultural development become aware of our actions before we take action.
Of course.
And that's still kind of the case.
Right.
But this week coming, if we can get a little bit more together, if I can get around the 2,000 mark or past the 2,000 mark, I've come to a spoken word agreement with the owner that we can make a down payment and write a contract essentially, which will commit us to buying the land.
Okay.
And if that happens, then he can cancel the contract.
He can cancel the contract. That's why was my next question going to be, really. What happens? Because a contract is normally a contract, but obviously it depends on if the owner changes or not really.
Welcome to Colombia to start with.
This is Colombia. All right, yeah.
Well, yeah. The thing is, first of all, there were clauses included in the contract, which allowed for a kind of an escape.
Right.
It requires him paying a sum of money to the group,
right?
But not such a terrible amount of money,
right?
As far as I understand. And this is the good news in a way, because when I began this process, I was not aware that I understood that I was going to have to get into legal waters with this company.
Do you still think you have to do that?
I'm hoping that is not the case.
Right. If you have to, that can cost a lot of money, no, or not?
It could cost a lot of money, but it could. But as far as I understand, based on the information that I currently have, he can dissolve that contract.
Okay, so that sounds great. That sounds great.
I shouldn't have to deal with that in a legal sense.
Right. Okay. So, and you say already, once that's done and once it's bought, you're making into a nature reserve, right? Because is that it? I've read something, and I put it in the email to you as well, about civil society nature reserve. Basically, anyone who owns a property can register a nature reserve as long as they demonstrate, like you are going to do, and you're doing already on your own piece of land, that have the interest and a commitment to conserve a sample of one or several natural ecosystems, and at the same time develop sustainable production activities with low environmental impact and friendly to biodiversity. It sounds exactly like what you're doing, right?
It does. It fits the bill perfectly.
Yeah.
So yes, that is exactly the path that we're going to try and go down.
Yeah. What are the positives there?
Above all, I think that the positives are that you gain some kind of legal recognition as what you are.
Why do you want that?
Well, the benefit of that is that if there are any kind of public projects or public investment projects that go on that might affect you, you have to be involved in the decision-making process.
Right.
That's one massive advantage. Another is that you can claim compensation for loss of biodiversity.
Right. What do you mean by that?
It means that if somebody, for example, were to set up a mining operation or a heavy intensive agricultural operation up upstream of you, and were to have a negative impact on the wildlife and plant life and things that exist on your nature reserve, then you have a legal complaint against those people. You've actually got a leg to stand on, we'll say, legally speaking. However, again, I will make the point that we live in Colombia, and Colombia in general, well, how can I put this? Laws are less stringently enforced, perhaps, than they are in other parts of the world. It's a developing nation. There's a serious problem with corruption.
Right. So money talks, or? Money
talks in a big way, and political clout talks as well.
Okay.
And
so it's not what you know, but who you know as well. If there's a mining corporation, for example,
absolutely.
upstream,
who you know, and money. Those are the big factors.
Right. Yeah. The article speaks as well about a lot of or much of Colombia's ecosystems are being radically transformed. They talk about deforestation, which I'm not very happy with. I hate it, as a matter of fact. They talk about extensive cattle farming. There's obviously more. There's also biofuels, which take up a lot of land as well. And you talk yourself about greenhouses for tomatoes and everything, right? Or am I? That's what they're going to do, right? Next door.
That's the plan for next door. Absolutely, yeah. But the most common in this area is cattle ranching.
Cattle ranching. Is that what you have experienced, or?
That's what goes on around. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
And previously, people just clear cut areas of the mountains and just let loose cattle in it.
Right.
It still goes on, but here it's less common than it used to be. What I understand in general in Colombia, certainly in places like the Amazon, during the COVID-19 problem, it has gotten a lot worse.
Right. Right. Not. You haven't noticed that though in Colombia.
Not in this particular region of Colombia that I'm living in. No. The thing is that with the difficulty in transportation, has even been perhaps a slight decrease in wood exploitation, timber exploitation in this particular area where I live in. But that could very easily just be because they've moved to another zone where it's easier to get away with.
And you already talked about violence in the history of Colombia, obviously. And that article really says it has opportunity now to build sustainability into its future, into its infrastructure. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, certainly this is an opportunity. I would like to believe that it will be the case, and certainly the possibility does exist. However, I have developed, not just in Colombia, but the world over, a certain amount of healthy cynicism, skepticism about these things.
Very good.
I would love to believe it. It's clearly the path forward. There's no other real clear path forward for the human race in these coming decades. But it seems that governments and different large agencies of that nature are dragging their feet on that one, and they don't really take it as seriously as they should. The only way I've seen that governments, and in fact that most people are willing to consider environmentalism as the path we need to take, is when they can make money out of it.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be good enough.
Is that something that you can perhaps showcase in your nature reserve?
In what sense?
That you can make money with a nature reserve and being sustainable?
Well, that would be a good idea, absolutely. I'm not the world's biggest fan either of what is often referred to as ecotourism. I've seen various different variations of it. Some cases it's been very conscious and well designed, and in other cases it's just very exploitative.
Sure.
However, if it's between that and mining, or that and clear cutting of forests, I suppose we need to go towards ecotourism in some way. So if we can attract people from other parts of the world to come to this area and spend money to see the nature as it is, well, that certainly would be a good demonstration to other people that maybe it's something worth saving.
It can also be sustainable farming.
Sustainable farming is another one. And in fact, that's something that on our own piece of land we're interested in developing as well in the future.
Okay.
Developing organic crops at the moment it's for a niche market because that's what exists.
Okay, then there's some news articles as well, few obviously. One was from COVID-19, laborers might be prevented from working harvests like coffee, and they're talking about a Colombian coffee shortage. Any thoughts? Is that...
What I refer to here is campesinos, which are essentially we'll say farmers or farm laborers. They tend to they're going about their day working and going to their different places and doing what they need to do.
Right.
There's no massive restriction here in the countryside, at least where I live in, as regards their actions. Transportation of goods has been a bigger problem. I've heard of people who have harvested a crop and been able to get it to market, and it ends up rotting on their land. So.
Okay. Then on the 5th of June was World Environment Day. Biodiversity was hosted by Colombia, as a matter of fact. Did you notice anything? Did you hear anything on the news? Nothing? Maybe something?
Honestly, I personally was unaware, and I think probably 90% of Colombia, if not more, was unaware.
Yeah.
If something went on, it would have been within a niche group and pretty low key. In fairness, the COVID-19 circumstance has made all public and events pretty much washouts at this point. There's not much happening.
Absolutely.
Anyway, these things would always be of interest to a limited market, we'll say, here in Colombia, because not everyone's interested in nature in that sense. It's a developing nation, and a lot of people are more interested in perhaps forgetting about their roots in the countryside and moving to the city where life is, in inverted commas, better, rather than necessarily celebrating the natural world that they live in or that they come from.
You did the other thing around. You went rural. You went...
I did. I'm backwards. I'm one of those backwards foreigners. And I very often receive comments and questions as regards that. People have great difficulty understanding my motivation. They have great difficulty understanding...
Tell us, why do you do that? Why do you go rural?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I suppose that for me, living in the countryside is about the closest thing to being normal, to feeling like everything's the way it should be. You know, I wake up in the morning and I see birds and animals and insects and flying around, and I hear the river and I feel the breeze. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the world we were evolved to live in. So I prefer to live in that world as I have that possibility. But certainly it attracts comments, especially with a European passport. Theoretically, I could live anywhere in the world. So why on earth Chinavita, Colombia? Well, we'll see over time whether I made the right or the wrong decision. Hopefully it was the right one.
But you built a cabin already, so you got your home,
built
right?
a cabin. Yeah, we set down roots. We don't have any children as of yet, but we have some dogs. And if things move forward as I hope that they will, well, we'll be more and more tied into the community here. This community garden, hopefully, will bring benefits both for us and for the community in general. Help to encourage, at the very least, young people to appreciate better their environmental surroundings, and maybe to consider other ways of producing food rather than with huge amounts of agrochemicals.
Yeah, makes sense. And what do you want over the next few weeks? Because you gave a deadline really high for the deposit.
This week, I need to pass, or we need to pass 2,000 mark. And when we do that, then I'll basically, that would be our first down payment to this individual. And if we can make that deadline, if we can make that payment, then we can stop the development in its tracks. The contract becomes cancelled, and then it's our responsibility to make sure that we can make the rest of the payments.
It sounds very achievable, to be honest with you.
I'm sure it does. The thing is that when one is living and working in a developed European country, 12,000 euros is not necessarily so much money.
Yeah.
But when you're living in rural Colombia, it's a different
shit lot of money. No, fair enough. And you got a GoFundMe page. I'll put a link in the show notes. People can find you as well on Facebook. It's a private group, though. Where else can people find you? You've got a LinkedIn page, or?
Okay, and no, I haven't set up a LinkedIn page yet. We have a public Facebook page as well.
Oh, do you? Okay.
We do, yes. I did this all in stages, and again with very little background or understanding of these things.
Yeah.
So I set up the group first, and then I set up the page, and the page is also linked to an Instagram page.
Okay.
And I'm going to be exploring other social media options now as well. For example, as you suggested, LinkedIn would be a good idea.
LinkedIn would be good. Yeah.
I'm not sure, possibly Twitter. I don't know what works best for these kind of projects, to be perfectly honest.
Well, LinkedIn is where the business is, so that's where some money might come from, I reckon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what we've done in that line as well is I've contacted individuals, private individuals, and some organizations who provide, in certain cases, funding to small environmental projects.
Yeah.
And I have yet, in certain cases, from the private individuals, I've had responses. I've had people contact me with advice, with support, which is good. From the organizations, I have yet to hear back. I got a response from Rewilding Europe, from their social media manager, who was very helpful. She was very kind and gave me some great advice. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to get around to all of it yet, but she certainly pointed me in some good directions. Unfortunately, the organization itself can't offer me any support because I'm not in Europe. So
sure. But you're Irish. Can't you go somewhere in islands where they?
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
I've contacted.
It makes sense. It makes sense to me.
I've contacted private individuals in Ireland, and I will continue to do so, and possibly organizations as well.
Yeah.
The thing is that for the time being, it's on top of everything else, we're working a lot, and so I'm trying to do a million different things simultaneously with very little understanding. But nevertheless, I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn, and hopefully between all of the things, all of the different tentacles that we put out in different directions, that we'll be able to find what we need.
Brilliant. That sounds like a good end note as well. Is there anything else you would like to mention?
I recommend to anyone who's interested to come and visit Colombia at some point once the lockdown has ended. Of course, you're welcome to come and see us here.
Brilliant, thank you.
And although I'm not going to pretend that Colombia does not still have social problems, it very clearly does. Mm-hmm. Things have improved greatly, and some of the impressions perhaps that people have of Colombia from the 1990s and things of that nature.
That's when I was there. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were a hardcore traveler in that case. Things were complicated in Colombia during that period.
I was hitching through Colombia.
My God, that's quite an achievement.
Yeah.
I did a lot of hitchhiking in my life. I wouldn't have considered Colombia as a good choice.
I was young and stupid.
As was I, but well, congratulations on surviving your experience.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, I mean, I recommend basically that it's not as bad as people might imagine that it is. When I first came to Colombia, a lot of people looked at me in fear and said, "What are you doing? Why are you going to Colombia?" The truth is that most of Colombia is not like that. There are trouble spots for sure, but there's large areas of pristine nature and safe areas. And very good people.
Stunning place.
It is worth knowing.
It's a lot safer than Venezuela, which is really.
Today, I wouldn't even consider Venezuela.
I've been to Venezuela as well 5 years ago, but
5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, things were already complicated then.
Very much so. Very much so. People were really, really poor. Had no money whatsoever, and they were afraid to talk to you almost, And my fiance, she was born in Paraguay. She's from Italian descent, but she speaks perfect, Spanish, and even in the lingo, really. So just that scared to talk to you, especially about politics, obviously. But it's Colombia is a lot better. I hear from my friends as well. So
Colombia is a lot better. Yeah, it is a lot better. We have a road to go, but we're on the right track, I hope.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Much appreciated.
Not at all, Peter. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, that was a podcast with Alexis Conneely in Colombia. I'll put all the links in the show notes. It was fantastic to have him on the show and talk about his campaign. I'll put the links in the show notes, obviously. I'll also put them on the website. That is podcasts.earth. And for his page, it would be /conservation in Colombia. You have been listening to Peter de Vries, and that's much appreciated. Thank you for doing so. Please don't forget to tune in next time. Thank you.